Hello, people. Welcome to the Meet Mentor YouTube channel. By the time he was 35 years old, today's guest had been to 193 of the world's countries. I believe the most recent nation he visited was Norway. Also, you should be aware that businessman and author Chris Guillebeau wrote many books, one of which sold 700,000 copies. His works include The Art of Nonconformity, a New York Times bestseller and a Wall Street Journal bestseller. I've been to 40 or 50 countries, and I feel like I've seen everything, but 193, what made you want to do that? It's interesting because when I had visited about 40 countries, that's when I started thinking about it. I was like, I always liked to travel. I worked as an aid worker for several years. Before I was an entrepreneur, and I've always been into. I had the idea that it would be cool to visit 100 countries before I passed away, but as I worked toward that goal, I realized that it was actually quite doable to visit only 50 of them, which would allow me to pick and choose which places to visit, and avoid those where obtaining a visa would be difficult. The true difficulty, in my opinion, was to complete them all before my 35th birthday, which I did in Norway, as you said. It was a terrific experience overall, and I feel really lucky to have had the opportunity to do it. How was North Korea? North Korea was fine. North Korea was I went at a time when things were a little bit quieter there, so hopefully I get a chance to go back. But I went to Kish Island. I actually didn't get to go to the mainland of Iran, but hopefully at some point. Very cool. What was the most, by the way, the entire time when he did this? Were you married? Were you single? How are you making money while you're doing this? I mean, I saw some of this stuff. You said the first 100 countries cost you $30,000. I didn't get what the last 93 costs, but how are you making money while you're doing this? Yeah, okay. A couple points there. So, first of all, when I was 19, that's when I started working for other people. This goes back 23 years, when everything was new in online auctions and e-commerce, so I began by selling items on eBay. I learned how to do some consulting, learn how to do website design, and I'm just learning like all these kind of random projects. But I was able to support myself doing that for about 10 years. And for me, freedom and personal security were very motivating factors. I don't exactly know the monetary figure for the second, but it would undoubtedly be more than $30,000 because, as you know, things become more complicated. What was the amount on the final 93, do you remember? Well, that's a fair question. It was definitely more expensive, but by that time, I had this career that was kind of sustaining it, and it was also nearing the end of my trip. As you're kind of like I used to when I'm starting out, like I could travel around the world, or go to like one region and get like 5 countries, that was great, but then for those last countries I'm like flying all the way to like Azerbaijan. So for me, it was absolutely worth it. What place was it that you went into with such high expectations and came out saying that you were cool, but nothing crazy? Okay, I like how you ask that. Because people are constantly asking me what my favorite country is, and I absolutely detest that question because it's so stupid, but the way you set it up is good. Actually, I learned a little bit more about Armenian culture, which I didn't know much about before I went, so that was great. I'd love to go back, and as for the other part of it, I don't know, like the South Pacific, I would say that it has an interesting culture. But I don't know if that's where I want to live because I'm more of a fast-paced person. There are a few things I'd like to focus on today. The first is obviously the mindset of nonconformity because your book is called The Art of Nonconformity. The second is because you mentioned that you were 6 months pregnant 23 years ago, which means that your 78 baby was born on April 4th of that year. I respect that, but for me, that wasn't a place that I wanted to go spend a lot of time. The practice of not fitting in. How do you embrace the idea of nonconformity, where you're not trying to please everyone but instead want to make sure some of the people in your life who may matter the most are made proud of you instead of trying to make everyone else happy? We often hear that the most unhappy people in the world are those who make everyone else happy but not themselves, but we're so used to wanting to please everyone. It's not at all like saying you have to not be concerned with their feelings or not be a good friend, family member, or partner. But in the end, you're going to be a better friend, family member, or partner if you are actually being kind to them. Okay, so people in your life, even good people, have all sorts of expectations for how they want you to live and the decisions they want you to make.